Hi everyone, I'm here today with Elaine Gardner, and she's going to talk to us about how we may be, despite our best efforts to eat healthy, finding some roadblocks in our food supply. There are some hidden dangers in the foods we eat, and you may be doing your absolute best to eat all your fruits and vegetables, get your protein, get everything in. But Elaine's going to give us just a few ideas of what else to be looking out for when we have a healthy diet to get our best nutrition. So I'm going to just get us started with the big question I'm sure everybody's thinking now is why are our food choices so important to our health and wellness? And what are these dangers, Elaine?
So I think we've been programmed or led to believe from an educational mainstream media perspective that food is just about fuel. Like you go to the gas station, you put the fuel in your tank, and everything runs beautifully. But our bodies are way more complex than that. And thinking about food as fuel is not nearly enough. We have to think about what actually runs our bodies and all the complicated functions that are happening for us on a minute to minute, day to day basis that we don't have to think about. And that's all about nutrients. And it's a really huge topic because our food supply is really limited in nutrients now for many, many different reasons, but one of them is because of the way that we farm. And all nutrients come from the soil, and most people aren't aware of that. So if the soil isn't healthy to start with, or if it's farmed in a conventional way where we're using synthetic fertilizers and synthetic nutrients, the soil is really deficient on the full range of nutrients that used to be there before we got to this big scale conventional farming. So all the food that's grown there, even if it's a healthy choice, spinach or tomato, cows that graze there, any of that stuff, those are all healthy choices. But if the soil is deficient, those products are still going to be deficient. So even when we're choosing good things now, we tend to be nutrient deficient because there's just not enough nutrients in even our good food these days.
So
And then
is that like typical grocery store food that we're talking about, or farmer's market? Is that these foods that are lacking in nutrients, is that what we are most likely to be out buying?
Yep, because it's widespread. Because we have a large industrial food supply system, so most of the food that we're getting is coming from long distances, from big, large-scale farms, and if they're grown in the ways where the soil is really deficient. And certainly choosing more local options, you can get some better choices, but not all local farmers are choosing options that create healthy soil and healthier food. A lot of them are still doing the same things that the big conventional farms do. And they may have more nutrients because they're local, so you're getting them quicker, and because nutrients will start to diminish over time. So you might get more, but you're still not getting the full scope of what you could be getting if you had access to ideal food grown in an ideal way.
So what would be the ideal food grown in the ideal way? And does that even exist anymore?
For some people it does, but for most of us, no, it doesn't exist anymore. So it would be, and we've changed what we've eaten over time, so it really varies. Like probably the earliest man, if I understand my history correct, would have been hunter-gatherers. So they would eat things that were wild and animals that were out grazing on large plains, and there was no manipulation in the animals or the soil, so there was no chemicals or anything like that. And everything was picked freshly at the height of nutritional peak, so to speak. And also, but they also did a lot of preservation too, because there were times in the year when they didn't have access to that, but they were preserving in a natural way. So there weren't, again, no added chemicals and things like that. So that's ideal. That's how humans came to be and started to proliferate and really thrive and be the dominant race and species, I should say, dominant species on the planet, because we have access to all that nutrients and none of the dangerous chemicals and things that we have today.
Right. So is that coming from needing to have such a large food supply? Is that what the change is now?
So I think that's what a lot of the big corporations that have all of this big technology would like us to believe.
Oh.
Over the years, because then we buy into this is the only way that we can actually feed the population. We need this technology, we need these chemicals, and so all of what they're doing is okay and acceptable and needed. But it doesn't appear to be that is the actual truth.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Unfortunately, we're a profit-driven society, and a lot of what happens, a lot of what we're fed from an educational perspective in the media is really for somebody else's um, to someone else's benefit. So if we believe that that's what we need, then of course we're going to support those chemicals because otherwise we're all going to die and starve, right? Because there won't be enough food. But a lot of things that I've read completely contradict that and say not only are we not giving ourselves enough nutrients, but we could provide plenty of food and it would be much more nutritious if we went back to simpler ways.
Wow. I mean, it's just counterintuitive, isn't it? That's we could provide more if we simplified. I mean, I think that's kind of mind blowing to even hear that.
It is, especially because we've been fed that lie that this is the only way that we can grow enough food. But we've existed for a very long time, and our food supply has only really, really dramatically changed within the last 40 to 60 years. Significant changes have taken place. So we did really well with just the basics for a really long time. So I think if we could get back to that place, it would be a much healthier place for everybody.
Wow. Now, what are some steps, or first of all, what are some things that we're looking for when there are things that are not as great, not necessarily dangerous, because you're not going to drop dead, but what are some of these things that are troublesome that we might find when we go to the grocery store?
So there's a really long list of things, unfortunately. Some of the most common ones are the pesticides and insecticides. A lot of those on our crops in order to minimize pests or reduce weeds so that we don't have to have all that manual labor involved.
Right.
We also have antibiotics and hormones in our food, and those arose out of a completely different reason, but really complicated and weird as well because a lot of our commercially raised animals are fed improperly. So they're not fed a diet that's really, really, truly healthy for them, and then they get sick. So then, of course, they can't be used that way, and it interferes with profits. So by giving them antibiotics prophylactically, it prevents them from getting sick, and they can still go into the food supply and create a profit even when they're not nutritionally superior. So, and then hormones will bring them to market faster. So it again increases the bottom line for the companies that provide them, but the hormones and the antibiotics are still present in the food that comes to market. And those are things that our bodies don't need. They certainly aren't providing nutrients and the interference with our own normal functions.
So, what are some of these effects that we're seeing if we are eating those foods that have these things on your list?
So, interestingly enough, the way the body works, it's very interesting because your body will try to work really hard for you no matter what you give it. And because it's trying so hard to do that, the things that we feel typically aren't quick, upfront, or dramatic. It happens slowly over time, and we feel like we're just aging or something else is going on, but we're just slowly falling apart little by little.
Wow.
We're not getting food to our bodies the way that we should. So we're not aware of what we're doing because it doesn't happen quickly and dramatically for the most part. But as the food supply gets farther and farther away from what is real and true and natural, more and more people are experiencing problems and connecting it back to what they're consuming. GMOs and hormones and antibiotics and preservatives and all kinds of things that are in our food that are interfering with people's health.
What are some of the warning signs that we should see? Since like you said, it's really hard to track when it's little by little over time. But what are some of those things that you're seeing with your clients or you're seeing in research that are kind of the red flags to look out for in our health?
Well, I think it's another tricky answer or question to answer because a lot of things are subtle and they're so common that everybody thinks that they're normal.
Ooh.
But I see things even in small children. They have digestive distress, they can have skin conditions, they don't sleep well, or they don't have good energy, or they have brain fog and trouble focusing at school or trouble focusing at work as an adult, anxiety, depression, all of these things that are so common that everybody thinks is normal, they're not normal, and they're increasing every day. And a lot of it has to do with our food, but also other things that are going on in the world, other toxins and our stressful lifestyles and things like that. But a lot of them come down to food, especially the digestive issues. They're really, really they're just going through the roof, the level of digestive distress that people are experiencing. But, again, if you think that maybe your food was too spicy and you pop an antacid or something like that, and the next day you make another excuse for it, when really it's what you're eating and it's slowly deteriorating and you're just not paying enough attention to understand that.
Well,
It's
those are, gosh, I mean, you make a compelling argument here that those things that are so common when we just don't feel great. I mean, when I did some research with women who are my clients and kind of, similar to those I serve, what they said was over and over again, they were talking about some of these symptoms that you're saying, they just feel tired. They just feel like they're aging. A lot of heartburn, which
Yep.
we have incredibly stressful lifestyles. So, some of this is from the stress, but it's really interesting to hear you say these things that are common, but they're not normal. We shouldn't be feeling that way.
But because most people are feeling them too, we don't have those other examples to be able to compare ourselves to and go, look how healthy that person is.
Yeah.
They sleep like a baby every night, and they have their brain is working beautifully, and they're digesting everything. We don't have those examples to follow and compare ourselves to let the light bulb go off and go, oh, there is a better way.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. If everybody feels this way and we feel this way all the time, you're not going to remember, oh, wow, I remember when I felt great and everything was just working, because everything was just working. And,
Yep.
We often attribute that to just being, we're just getting older.
Yep. Yeah, I hear that over and over and over again. And that's not the way that things are supposed to happen. But because it's so normal and typical, that's the meaning we assign to it. Oh, we're just getting older. But really, we're not providing our bodies with the things that they need to function the way that they should.
Okay, now the burning question now for me, and I'm sure everyone listening, is what do we do? Where do we even focus first? Like, how do we start to remedy this? Because, I don't want to feel crappy. And if
Right.
it's something that can be solved with food, that's really appealing. So what do we do first?
So I think food is a great place to start because it's something that you have a repetitive exposure to multiple times a day. So by choosing better quality food, you can make a huge difference. And the good news is that there is more and more good quality food coming to market because the public is demanding it. So the tides are turning, but there's still way more unhealthy options available. And there's a lot of confusion. Like there's some food labels are not legally regulated. They actually have no meaning and can be outright lies. Some have meaning. So unless you've taken the time to educate yourself and know what to look for, it can be very confusing. But I think that so I would definitely encourage people to take the time and get educated. And it's actually why I created an online program about that. Because it's not easily accessible information. You have to ferret it out. But I think one of the most transparent and easiest choices, and again, more and more becomes available every day, is to choose organic. Whether it's a fruit, an animal product, something in a package, organic is actually legally defined, and it's typically third-party verified. So they have very strict standards about what you can and can't do when you have an organic product. And there's going to be no hormones, no synthetic pesticides, no sewage sludge, no GMOs, no hormones, no antibiotics. So you take half a dozen or more things immediately out of your food when you choose organic. And studies show that organically grown food also has more nutrients. So it's a win-win. You get less of what you don't need and a lot more of what you do need just by choosing organic.
Now, what do you say to people when they, you think of those who live in places where it's hard to get food, not necessarily a food desert, but, you're shopping at your bodega, or you are trying to get food that is convenient because you're in a hurry, or your budget restricts, you from getting organic for everything. What do you recommend to those people where it's not as easy to go pop into Whole Foods like it would be for me down the street,
So I think one of the easiest, for me, I have several grocery stores within easy driving distance of me, but I never step foot into those stores. They just don't have enough of the options that I'm looking for in order for me to make it worth my while to go there. So even though it takes me 30 minutes or 45 minutes to get to a Whole Foods or a Wegmans, they have better choices, and I can get there and buy a ton of things in one trip. So even though it takes me longer, it saves me time long term. And as long as I plan and I buy a lot at once, I don't have to go every week. So I think that's one of the things to do is look outside of your immediate area and planning ahead, because if you don't know what you need or what you're going to eat, you can easily end up trying to pop in and out of a store thinking it's convenient to do so because the store is there, but you're actually costing yourself time and then not allowing yourself to have the availability of that higher quality. And from a financial perspective, it's not a simple question, I think. Some of it, I think, is just a mind shift perspective. No, we don't prioritize food. And because we have cheap food available, we compare the cost of organic and think it's a lot more expensive. Right. But the organic food is the true cost of raising food in a very healthy and natural way. And as a country, in comparison to other countries, we actually spend less of our incomes on food than almost any other country in the world. So our perspectives are really skewed about the cost of food. And I think if we minimize some of our other expenses that are non-essential, that cell phone plan or that fancy car, then we can have the food that we need. And I realize that some people are absolutely in that position where they cannot afford, like there just isn't enough money to go around, and they're not wasting money on anything extravagant or expensive. And in that case, just to prioritize the things that you eat the most frequently and try to choose those organic and get those cleaner, because that's going to be the most exposure that you get. And so that's a nice way to do that.
That's great advice. I've never heard anyone say to prioritize what you eat the most, but that makes so much sense. I think that's really practical advice, especially, if a lot of us tend to eat sort of the same things all the time. And, maybe you don't need that organic papaya that you're getting for just like part of a recipe. But what about if you eat an apple every day or bananas? I think that's a compelling argument that if you can plan a little bit, if you can prioritize, that you can get better food. I think that's practical.
And the Environmental Working Group is a nonprofit organization, and they actually publish a study every year of like they call it the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Mm-hmm. If you look up that on the internet, you can also see which produce is the most contaminated. And again, especially if you're eating those things a lot, that would be a way to prioritize your organic choices and minimize your pesticide exposure.
That's a great idea.
You can use. And some stores are also going to be more expensive than others, so you could also do some price comparison in that way as well. Like Wegmans and Trader Joe's tend to have less expensive choices than Whole Foods, but in every store in every area is going to be different. But if you do a little research and start bopping around and checking things out, you might be able to really save some money that way as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Trader Joe's, because that is one where sometimes it's a little hard to do your full grocery shopping there because it sort of depends on what they have. But in general, their produce is really cheap. They tend to have the standard stuff. They always have apples, always have bananas, and your kind of regular foods. And Whole Foods is not accessible to some people. It's just, it's pricey. And Trader Joe's is often a great option. There's one that just opened up by us called Earth Fare that I believe is a chain that's national, and the prices seem good there too. So
every area of the country will have different opportunities, different places that they offer. So you have to check out what's in your area. Absolutely. Yeah. And I traveled to Phoenix, Arizona a couple years ago. We went to Whole Foods. When I travel at a conference, I like to buy like organic fruits and things in my hotel room for breakfast. They had no organic produce, like no organic foods.
What?
Yeah, I was floored. Yeah. I think I found like one orange, and that was it. Luckily, they had organic yogurt, so I still had my breakfast choices, but I was really, really surprised.
That's really weird for a major city not to have options. But
maybe it was a bad week.
Your point about you have to do a little bit of research and a little bit of looking around. I mean, if think about if you do that, it saves you looking around different stores or, continually trying to find something or being shocked by the price. And I think it's worth a little bit of research. And your point
Oh,
about the dirty dozen list is a good one because there are ones to prioritize. If you only have so much organic budget, those are the ones to do it for.
but I think it's really important, and I don't mean this in a critical way, to make sure that your head's not in the sand. That even though you don't have those things in your local store, to be aware that there are risks within the food supply, and what you're putting in your body every day becomes you and can
Yeah.
determine the course of your lifetime and can fully enhance your life or completely destroy your life. So you don't want to just dismiss it and have it be super easy. It takes time, it takes effort, but once you figure out where to go, what to buy, how to budget for it, or how to adjust other things so you can buy the most important things, it's no easier than what you're doing now. Every transition takes time to learn, but
Yeah.
it's really, really wild to do so.
I mean, that's true of any part of a healthy lifestyle. How you're going to manage your stress, how you're going to get your exercise in.
Yes.
And your point here that once you do it, it's not like it's easier to go back to the other way. You've already done the hard work if you do a little bit of research, a little bit of looking around. And, like with anything in a healthy lifestyle, it takes planning and, you save your time later on by doing the
And your
planning.
health. Yeah.
And absolutely. I mean, when you've really struck me with this idea of over time we see such incremental differences by not having quality nutrition, and it can just creep up on you and creep up on you, and it's hard to pay attention when something is, it's the same as, you gain 5 pounds every year. You don't notice it really, but the effect in the end is cumulative. And having a lack of nutrition because you're not getting your nutrients, even though you're doing what you're supposed to, that's a frustrating culmination that hurts your health. And I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
it's irritating that you think you're doing what's right. You're spending all that time, but yeah,
And the
it's
most
really
irritating
unfortunate.
part is it should be easy. Food should be
Yes.
food. It should be, just straightforward and obvious. And it's anything but at this point in time, unfortunately. Especially, I've never lived any other country, so I don't know. But here
Yeah.
in the States, I'm well versed with the complicated food system that we have. And
Yeah.
if you're just going to the store and buying whatever's there, whatever looks good, whatever's available, whatever tastes good, without understanding what's in the food and what you're choosing, then you are absolutely at risk. And these days, facing a significant health challenges is the norm, and it's ever increasing. And starting in ever younger ages. So we've got a real problem here, and it's not just food. A healthy lifestyle is really critical, but
Yeah.
food is a huge piece of that healthy lifestyle puzzle.
Oh, absolutely. I would argue it's the biggest piece of that puzzle because if you don't have proper nutrition, you don't have energy. If you don't have energy, you're going to make bad choices. You're going to handle stress worse. You're not going to sleep well. I mean, I feel like nutrition is the cornerstone of a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, for most people it is. There could be some extenuating circumstances where there's something really traumatic going on, or you're living in a cesspool of some kind of
Yeah.
waste or something like that. But for the majority of people, yeah, it's going to be the biggest piece.
What do you think is the biggest mistake we make with our food? In trying to be so good and so healthy, what's our biggest mistake? At least in your experience.
So, two things. I think a lot of people have a misguided notion of what is healthy, and that if they're going to be healthy, it's not going to be fun, and they're not going to like their food. They're going to have to eat salad and rice cakes every day, and that healthy food doesn't taste good, and that is going to be a big deprivation. And I completely disagree with that because fantastically healthy food can have a huge variety. You can eat all kinds of different things, and it should be food that you enjoy and tastes good and makes you feel great, whatever that is for you. And I lost my train of thought about what I was going to say about the other point. Oh, the other one is that people eat food that tastes good, and there's a whole department of science in an industry for profit that knows this and has completely manipulated our food system to put chemicals in our food so food tastes good and gets people addicted to it. So if you're eating only for taste and you're eating if you're eating real food only for taste, that's fantastic. But if you're eating anything packaged boxed or from a store and you're choosing your food just based on taste, you're going to be in trouble because you're going to get all kinds of things that have been intentionally put in there to make you want to have that food.
Well, the combination of, you've heard the slogan, once you pop, you just can't stop for Pringles.
Yeah,
And that combination of fat and salt and crunch, and it's very addictive. And, there are ways that we can take that sort of the enjoyment of those flavors and have them in healthier foods.
absolutely.
But it's, when you think about what do you like about your favorite food? Is it that it's a nice chewy brownie? Is it that it's something nice and sweet? And then figuring out how you can replicate that enjoyment, the essence of the enjoyment. It's going to take some experimentation, but I mean, if you're looking for sweet and chewy, dates are amazing, or, dried apricots.
And when you get that junk out of your life, you eliminate that interference factor, that the intentional hijacking of your taste buds. You recover your own natural taste buds, and then real food that's good for your body tastes really good. And
Mm-hmm.
vegetables and fruits and healthy fats and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, when you have, like, when you go to a farmer's market and you get the most beautiful blueberries and strawberries, nothing tastes better than that. And, they might not be that treat you're looking for if you just want to have something terrible for you. Because, sometimes you just want the cookie, and that's okay. But for the most part, food that is truly nutritious, it tastes really good.
Yes, and you can make cookies that can be
Mhm.
nutritious for you. So there's almost always a way to find the things that you need and get them into your lifestyle in a healthy way.
Yeah, I really like your philosophy of where this just is kind of a non negotiable, where you need to fix your nutrients. You need to
Yeah,
get this right. And I mean, it may be some harsh truth for some of our listeners, but I think you are really standing by something that's critical as the cornerstone of our healthy lifestyle. You have to, if you're going to eat it, it needs to be quality. And if you're going to be spending all this time trying to be healthy, spend it in the right ways so that you truly are getting what you need from your food, which is a
absolutely.
lot harder than you'd think it would be.
It is, but it's getting easier every day. And I think that our definition of healthy is a little bit skewed, or our perception of what you need to do. Like a lot of people over exercise and they think,
Hmm.
and I've met people that, are crazy runners and they think because they're running and burning calories, they can eat jelly beans and ice
Yeah.
cream. Like, no, 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 no. You're working your body really hard. You need more nutrients in order to sustain that.
Yes.
You look good, so and I also think that we're a reactive type of uh, our society
Hmm.
from that mindset. We don't worry about our health so much. We worry about our appearance
Right.
a lot, but we don't worry about how we feel until we don't feel good.
Yes.
And that's really tragic. And I can speak easily about protecting my health because I lost it and recovered it. But I'd like to be able to transfer what I've learned to encourage people to have a preventive mindset as opposed to having to face something like I had to face, because you
Yeah.
can keep yourself out of prevention if you take care of your body.
Now,
And I'd like
what was your experience in regaining your health? I mean, that's hard if you've lost your health and then trying to get back. How long did it take you and what effort did you go through?
it took a long time, but I suffered for a long time too. I had significant health issues for more than 2 decades, starting at 14 years old.
Oh.
And I found some things to manage my lifestyle, like chiropractic and massage, so I could stay relatively comfortable.
Hmm.
And after my kids were born, things really fell apart again. And then I had everything I wanted and I was miserable and couldn't enjoy it. And I said, I'm going to figure out how to fix this no matter what it takes. But I didn't know anybody that was making choices outside of the box. So I had no one to ask. But fortunately, the universe started throwing things at me, and all kinds of holistic things that I had never ever heard of before just started showing up. And I started experimenting and talking to different practitioners and trying supplementation and different types of body work. And it really just unfolded from there. But it was all trial and error and years of learning and practice because I didn't have anyone to guide me.
Yeah. We are so lucky that we have, first of all, that we have the accessibility of the internet to be able to
Yes.
work with people like you to find the information we need. And, you think about how, especially women like us, where we want to problem solve, we're goal oriented, high achievers, we want to just say, okay, I'm solving the problem, boom, done. But from your story and from everything you're saying, we didn't get to this place quickly. And coming out of it and finding your health is not a quick fix, sadly. And
Right.
I think you do feel immediately better once your body starts getting its nutrients, but the journey that you took from feeling terrible to, experimenting, finding what works for you. And you certainly look glowing and healthy to me. So it's nice that you can counteract what's been going on and
Yes.
what might be hurting your health. And it's nice to know that, like you said, it's getting a little bit easier to find the information, to educate ourselves. But it does take that effort. It does take some time and consistency. You can't just eat
Yeah.
organic over the weekend and then pow, you look great.
Right. It's absolutely consistency over time. And the beauty now though is there are so many more holistic professionals. So,
Hmm.
but it's still not on people's radar. So
Hmm.
unless you're aware that you need the attention, you're not going to seek it. And then you may try a few tweaks here and there, but not go full out seeking the
Right,
kind of assistance and knowledge that you need.
right.
And that's still unfolding, and more people are, which is fantastic,
Hmm.
and more professionals to help people. But there's still limited knowledge throughout the general public of that those things exist, and that
Yeah,
you really dramatically change your life if you think outside of the box and get some support.
yeah. We have so many tools now, and I think that support is hugely important. I think you would have gotten to this point faster if you'd had more
Yeah.
people to help
Oh
you.
yeah.
It's,
Absolutely, absolutely. But this was December of 2000 that I made my commitment
yeah,
to get well. So the online world hadn't exploded in the
yeah,
way it had um, at that point, and even the trained professionals still weren't available at that time. Luckily, I did meet lots of talented practitioners, and that's how I got healthy by partnering with people and making changes and cleaning up my own lifestyle
yeah,
and having these people support and help me. I couldn't have done it without them.
yeah. And it's along with your general practitioner, you need to have people who can support you, some specialists. If you have something going on, ask the questions. That's been a big theme of this summit where I keep saying, ask the questions,
Yeah.
find out what you need, be open with how you're feeling because feeling bad is not normal. It's not something you have to live with. And,
Keep
you know,
searching because a lot
yeah.
of people will see a practitioner and kind of get naysayed and
Hmm.
then or think that it's all in their head. I've had some of my clients come in and say, well, they're telling me it's all in my head and just take Prozac or whatever. And
Yeah.
you keep searching until you feel that someone listens to you and
Yes.
has some constructive advice to support you, even if it's like, I can't help you, but I fully respect
Right.
what you're doing, and keep looking for people because those
Yeah.
people are out there. But sometimes you have to try a few practitioners
Yeah.
before you really find someone that works well for you.
Absolutely, especially when you have a doctor who is just kind of like your home base, your general practitioner. If they aren't listening to you and they're not helping you look for solutions, it may be time to find someone who will listen. I'm
Right.
extremely fortunate that my doctor she's always listening, always looking to hunt down a problem. But that's not true of all practitioners. So asking your questions, being
Yeah.
persistent, and
What's really
finding
hard,
help.
medical practitioners
Mhm,
are stuck in a box.
mhm,
They are limited within the scope of their profession and legal
mhm.
guidelines to only practice what they've been taught at school. So
Right.
they may not have the knowledge, experience, or ability to give you any more than what they know. And I really I feel for them. They're
Mhm.
really stuck. And
Yeah.
hopefully that will shift and change that they'll be able to offer more so that they can help more people. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
really wonderful practitioners that want to help people, but their tools just aren't necessarily
Yeah.
the right thing.
It's so important to have, you know, your medical practice you go to, have them be open to referring you out to specialists, to dietitians, to, you know, weight loss programs, to whatever it may be. I feel the sign of a good doctor is the ability to have that network where they don't know everything. Yes, they're general, but they don't know everything. And,
Absolutely.
you know, so also if you don't tell them everything you're feeling, they don't know what tests to order, what to do for you. So
Right.
it goes both ways with that communication. But you know,
Absolutely.
that trial and error you talked about, I think that is common really in anything with our health and wellness, because sometimes we don't know exactly what's wrong until we think a little bit more on it and then we try some stuff and talk it
Yes.
out.
And there
Yeah,
can be many healthy choices available,
yeah,
but only one out of six might be the right choice for you.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same for any part of your lifestyle. If something doesn't make you feel good, isn't something you're going to keep up with, this is not a lifestyle option, you know.
But I think people, what I run into a lot is people are like, well, I don't feel good, but I'm eating really, really healthy. So that can't be what it is. And they feel like they have to be doing something else wrong. They're missing
Right.
the boat. But oftentimes it's, yes, they're choosing healthy options, but it's not the right healthy options
Yeah.
for you. So just
Exactly.
that mindset
Exactly.
and opening up the possibility that there's a different choice that could be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you're eating the right kind of stuff, but it's not the most nutritious version. You know, to go back to what you'd said at the beginning, that
Right.
it might not have the nutrients you think it does.
Right. Quality is huge.
Yeah. Now, we've talked a lot about produce, but what about things like meat and dairy, eggs, those animal proteins? What should we look for with those?
So those are more complicated.
Mhm.
Organic is still a really good first
Okay.
choice because again, no hormones, no antibiotics. They're not going to be coming off of fields that were had pesticides, so they're going to be cleaner. And because of the way that they're fed, their nutritional profile should be a little bit different and healthier. But like people, animals require specific
Mhm.
diets, and cows in a commercial feeding operation are typically fed corn and soy and things that their bodies don't really like. So it's not the best thing for them. They're not going to be at their healthiest. If they're grass fed, out
Yeah.
grazing on pasture, the nutrient profile from that type of grass fed cow is going to be completely different from that of that commercially raised cow. So trying to find that, which is difficult because grass fed on the label actually isn't legally verified. So it doesn't
What?
actually mean that it was grass fed. I know it's terrible, but it's the truth.
What?
Sorry.
That
Yeah,
seems so, I mean, that just seems cut and dry right there. Either they were fed with grass or not.
yeah, no,
Oh,
but because it's not legally defined, a manufacturer can slap it on a label, knowing that consumers are looking for that and willing to pay a higher price for that. But it doesn't actually have to be true. So that's really, really tragic and unfortunate. So um, really you want to find that transparency, and from what I've seen right now, there's not a lot of big commercial companies that are doing that. I actually have one of my private clients is a grass-fed beef expert, and he's trying to get that commercial product out there in a big way, and hitting all kinds of stumbling blocks, but has a fantastic product. um, but usually you're going to find that from more of a local supplier
mhm.
that has a smaller farm
Right.
that's supplying consumers in the area. There's actually a farm store about a half an hour from me, and they're doing all grass-fed beef,
Mhm.
and their cows and chickens are not being fed GMOs or hormones, and they're out on pasture. They're eating the things that they should be eating. But it's just like going to the grocery store because everything is packaged in small
Yeah.
packages. It's all frozen, so I can easily choose my favorite cuts, and I know I'm getting super super healthy meat. So that oftentimes is the best scenario. If I didn't have something like that, I would still be buying organic because it's still a good choice. It's just not as good.
Yeah, that's
And
good guidance there.
yeah.
So,
So yeah, and seafood gets even more challenging. So
oh yeah.
you're out in the open ocean, and then there's farm seafood, and again, that's why I created the whole food program that I
Yeah.
created my online course because of all these nuances. Like
Yeah.
organic is a great first step, but there are still other pieces to know if you're going to get the best quality food possible.
Right. So what are those some of those labels that you have totally blown my mind with the whole grass fed not being necessarily grass fed. I know that natural is one of those
Yes,
that means absolutely
bingo.
nothing. What are
Yep.
some of the other ones that we think mean something and don't?
So I always forget which is which, but some poultry you'll see either no hormones or no
Yeah.
antibiotics, and it misleads a consumer to think that that particular company is producing something different than the
Mhm.
others, but it's actually a federal regulation that
Really?
chickens aren't allowed to have whatever that is, hormones or antibiotics. So that's another misleading thing, trying to make the company look
Yeah.
bad. They have to. It's not a choice. Um, Oftentimes I see a lot lately, which really unnerves me, is a lot of labels that say non-GMO,
Yeah.
but unless it is non-GMO project verified, that could be a, a lie. Because the non-GMO project is actually a company that is hired by a corporation to
Mhm.
third-party verify that there's no GMOs from beginning to end in that product. And you also don't get any GMOs when you choose organic, but the non-GMO project is a really reliable label as well. But yeah, so those are some of the most common ones: the natural, the grass-fed, anything that says non-GMO but doesn't say non-GMO project verified.
Right.
A lot of tricks like that.
Now, what
Yeah,
about free range and cage free?
yeah. Those aren't really defined or meaningful either. Like free range, you can have a big chicken coop where they're not caged and they have a little outdoor, like a little 1 foot area or something that they could step into, but they don't. So our perception of free range is they're out roaming in the wild and all
Yeah.
these pastures, and that's not usually the reality of what it is. So, and then like vegetarian fed or something like that, a lot of those labels, and it could be vegetarian fed, but
Mhm.
what does that actually mean from a health perspective? Not necessarily much of anything.
Yeah, I
So,
never got that one. It's like, well, what else would you be feeding them? Other chickens? I mean, that's okay.
well, but chickens are supposed to, like chickens in a natural environment would be out pecking in the grass and they're going to
Mhm.
eat bugs and things
Yeah.
like that, as well as plants. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of like, it's a little confusing. Like, what are chickens really supposed to eat? Are they supposed to be vegetarian? Not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They do go out there and eat worms and stuff.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, there's so much that we assume or we just kind of imagine from Sesame Street and it just kind of stuck with us. And it's not necessarily true. So it really underscores that need for us to be educated, to be informed.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's true of anything with your health, period. But it's like the wild, wild west when it comes to food, it seems like.
Yeah.
This
And
is
we're
surprising.
removed from our food supply. We don't see where it's coming from. We don't see
Yeah.
how it's packaged. We don't see what the
Yeah.
animals are fed. We just see it show up on the supermarket shelves or at the farmer's market. So we
Yeah.
don't think all the way through as to all the questions that we should be asking and what could have happened to them before they got to us.
Yeah. And the consequences could be huge over time that if you're not feeding yourself as well as you are assuming you're feeding yourself, then you're eventually going to have problems. I mean, we need to have nutritious food. That's kind of
Right.
the point
So
of eating.
nutrients run all of the functions of your body. So when you don't have the right nutrients, your body's not working the way it should.
Yeah.
It's not going to be optimal. Your digestive system
Yeah.
isn't going to digest the way it should. Your blood sugar could be swinging because you don't have enough B vitamins or zinc or things like that. But when you add in the toxins that are in the food supply, now you're challenging all your detoxification pathways
Hmm.
and really interfere with the way that your body should be working and have some
Yeah.
serious health consequences from it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've made a very good argument today for really being conscious. And I know that many of us are going to say, oh my God, I'm so busy. But it's truly, I mean, even what you've just said in summing everything up there, those effects that you can have from being deficient can lead to your body not being able to do what it's supposed to. Your body is supposed to be able to detoxify itself just fine and how the processes work. But that's in trusting that you're putting the right stuff in. So, we have to provide for ourselves to be able to let our bodies do what they're supposed to.
And when we put our health on hold because we're busy and we feel like we don't have the time, that's when we're at the greatest risk. So we can have all these wonderful, busy lives and be doing all these fantastic things, but if we're not adjusting our health, everything could fall apart in an instant, because your health, everything that you do on a day-to-day basis involves your health. And that's the last thing I want to see people experience. And sometimes, it's mild and people get that wake-up call and they change things. And sometimes it's devastating. And young women, young men, children die every day from things that are possibly preventable. And that's just an absolute huge tragedy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for really giving us the wake-up call we need, because you're right. What's the point of being busy if you're essentially killing yourself? And
right.
I thank you for giving us such candid talk here and really giving us good reason to pay attention, even though it takes some work. So thank you very much, Elaine.
I'm glad you appreciate it. I hope other women do as well. We do a lot of things as women. We juggle a lot of balls, and sometimes we're the last thing on our minds. But we're the glue that holds everything together. And I was one of those people who lost my health, and if I can help anybody prevent that from happening in their lives, then that's just an absolute blessing for me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And we appreciate having you today.
Thanks for having me.